Hi everyone, Maori Namaste. I'm Ricky Kej and today I'm in the spectacularly beautiful island country of Kiribati. Kiribati is on the front line of climate change because it is suffering the most catastrophic effects of climate change. Today I'm going to be chatting with the great Anote Tong. Now Anote Tong is the ex-president of Kiribati and he served all 3 of his permissible terms as president. He's also one of the best known faces of the Pacific and also one of the most respected and one of the most beloved. In fact, I call him the Mahatma Gandhi of the Pacific. Climate change is absolutely real and it is man-made. To show you the effects of climate change on this beautiful country of Kiribati, let me show you this village which I'm standing in. It's a village that used to be thriving, it had a population, it had a beautiful culture. And let me show you what it is reduced to now because of man-made climate change. Take a look. Good morning, Mr. Tong. It's an absolute pleasure to meet you and to be at your house, which is like, you're practically living in nature. Me being in Kiribati, I spent almost a week over here now. And, just flying into the island, you see how beautiful the island is. The pilot was almost showing off. When he was landing, he actually circled around the whole island.
Right.
And, and I got to see the beauty of it, the beauty of the water, the beauty of the land, and it's stunningly beautiful. There's no other words to describe it. And even being on the island, the people are so friendly. The people are so nice. I mean, I've been having a beautiful time and I can even see myself living over here.
Well, you'll be very welcome. But this is something we're very proud of.
Yeah.
We do have beautiful environment here. It's unique, and I guess this is why a lot of people want to come to the South Pacific. The weather is wonderful, the sea is beautiful, the land is beautiful, and of course the people are not reached a stage where they've transitioned into a totally developed environment. The personal relationships are still very, very strong. So to lose that would be such a disaster.
Could you tell us what Kiribati means to you as a person?
It really means life. The land for people in Kiribati is very much a part of our life. I mean, we're a traditional society. We believe in the spiritual world. That is our tradition. So really, it's going to be very strange. It's going to be very difficult to be able to carry on without that linkage.
What the scientific community says, and through your research, through your personal research, how much of time does Kiribati have?
Well, for some communities, the time is over, they've had to move.
Yes.
There are communities which I believe will have to move within 5 years.
Okay.
And so the frequency will increase. The severity of what's happening will increase. As you know, we don't have any high ground to move to. And so once it happens, it's going to be almost total. A lot of people, even in this country, continue to deny it. They blame the responsibility in God's hands. But God has created us and with our own intellect to deal with these issues. But I think what is not often understood is, as in some countries you have a cyclone, a hurricane, over time the land remains there and the water recedes. In our case, it does not. It's a disaster that doesn't go away.
Yes.
Okay? And it keeps getting worse. And that is the difference. And it's not easy. It's unprecedented. It's uncharted. It's never happened before.
For people who do not know and people who are ignorant about this or people who have not read about it, what exactly is climate change and how is it affecting this world?
Well, the science is very clear about climate change. The fourth assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, it was fairly conclusive that it was human-induced and that within the century, countries like ours will be underwater.
Yeah.
It's not part of a nation. It's our entire nation will be underwater. What we are facing with the threat of climate change is really the challenge to our very, very survival, what we are as a people. And the question that we continue to ask ourselves, what is to become of our children? How will they continue to live? What will become of them without that link with the land and the spirits there? And how do we deal with it? I can tell you as a leader, it's been such an agonizing journey for me. And in trying to communicate that to the rest of the global community has been quite a mammoth task. There were times when I was so frustrated. There were times when I was so depressed that people could not understand.
Do you think it is very frustrating that countries actually see quantifiable effects that are happening in island nations like your own? I mean, I've traveled over here for the first time and I can see the effects with my own eyes. I can see places where there used to be homes are now underwater.
Yeah, well, this is exactly what we are facing. And the situation is somewhat similar to something happening. Okay, we go underwater and people will turn around and say, oh, too bad. And I think that's the kind of attitude and the kind of, that this is the challenge, that we as human beings must have the moral responsibility to understand our obligations. I think really what we need from people is greater compassion and a great understanding. I come across this very often where I'm arguing with other leaders to try to convince them that we must cut back on greenhouse gas emissions. But always the answer is this, that so what would happen, if we do that? Our economies would suffer. And so the lifestyles of our people we could not maintain that. My response has been very, very simple. So you're worried about your economies. What about our survival as a people?
Yeah, economy versus survival.
Absolutely.
And I think the very existence of countries, the very existence of homes, the very existence of even the economies are at stake through climate change. And everybody's got a very, very short-term view of what economy means.
Surely this is not the way to go forward. It's because nobody wins at the end of all of this. We all lose, and I think we've got to understand this. The developed countries have had their turn. Now it's our turn. So the question will be, the challenge will be for the international community: are you willing to come forward?
Yeah.
And I know sometimes there is this attitude that we'll go ahead because we can look after them. We'll bring them over.
Yeah.
In other words, we'll destroy your islands, but we'll help you repair it. It's about maintaining the what is there.
Yeah.
Not just the land, but the people, and the people are part of the land. Okay?
Yes.
We're all part and parcel of the same thing. I think much too often, in terms of this consumer-driven economies, we forget that as human beings, we're part of this earth.
Yeah.
Everything that's there, we're part of it, and we tend to think of them as means of getting development, means of getting hugely wealthy. We have to change our attitude. And I've always said that those countries and those people with the capacity to do something about climate change have the obligation to do it. Because climate change is not of our making. And we cannot do anything about it on our own.
Nations have reached a certain stage through development and through large carbon footprints. Island countries like your own are affected devastatingly.
Absolutely. And so I've always referred to our situation as those countries on the front line, because if and when we fall, there'll be another front line, and that front line will keep moving back until those countries and those people who believe they will not be affected will eventually be affected, and that is the reality we are facing. And I can guarantee you, if we could keep your emissions within your borders, then I've got nothing to say. But your emissions become my emissions, and I want to cut back my emissions, so I'm asking that you cut back my emissions which you are creating. And I think the sooner we begin to understand that, maybe the better we can respond to this challenge.
You've been a very, very beloved and very loved president of Kiribati for 3 terms, and you're still a warrior when it comes to the environment. You're a green warrior. What is your opinions about nations not being able to do anything because they are fighting elections every 4 or 5 years? Because you've been on the other side of it too.
No, I continue to ask myself that question, and I think I also challenge my fellow leaders. I think politics is politics. It's about it's a means of getting where it is that you must get in terms of winning the elections. But I think leadership is different. In order to be a leader, you've got to take steps which sometimes nobody else is willing to do. And on an issue like this, there's got to be leadership. I've always called for very strong and credible global leadership in order to tackle climate change. I think the arguments that are being put forward today by some countries might have been understandable, even excusable many years ago. But now the information is different. We know exactly, the science is very precise as to what the implications would be. And I think it's not about politics. You don't play politics with the realities of life. And it's not about elections. It's about what's going to come. Definitely going to come if we don't do anything about it. We're not talking about just a few countries. We're talking about millions and hundreds of millions of people being affected. And that is going to be huge. Even worse than what is happening with the migrant crisis in Syria.
In your opinion, do national leaders need to come out of their comfort zone and become global leaders? Is it very important for them to do this because whatever they do is going to affect their neighboring countries and it's going to affect countries which are even on the other side of the world?
Now, I don't think it's important. I think it's imperative. In terms of the challenge of climate change, there is nothing more globalized than climate change. I keep arguing with my colleagues who continue to put forward the argument that they cannot credibly cut back on greenhouse gas emissions below a certain level because it would affect their economies. And my response has been, okay, you're worried about your economies, but for us, it's about our survival. Quite often we say, oh, we'll see what they do before we do anything. No, we've got to take leadership to say we go ahead and do it. We do what's necessary, whether somebody else follows or not. As a species, we've done wonderful. We made wonderful progress in terms of getting rid of the slavery. Slavery wasn't even economic. It was economic for those farmers, the cotton farmers, and they argued that they could not survive as farmers without slavery.
Very good analogy.
Yeah, and so the world decided, rightly, that it was immoral and did away with it. The farmers eventually innovated, and they not only did they survive, but they thrived. And I've been putting forward this analogy over and over again, that here we are because we want to continue to do it the way we've been doing it, but it's bad. It's bad for some people. Just because you think it's not bad for you, it doesn't relieve you of the responsibility, of the moral responsibility. We have the technology in terms of renewable energy has been so developed that we could be using renewables at a cheaper rate than we are paying for fossil electricity generated from fossil fuel. So the next step should be to go ahead and do this, rather than keep talking about it and take it out of the research laboratories and put it out in the field. The agreement at the end of last year in Paris was certainly a milestone, very, very significant development, but it needs to carry on. It's not over yet. And so there's got to be real substantial commitment behind the agreement. In my time, we devised a multi-pronged strategy because we want to be able to continue to have this nation in existence. So we were committed to maintaining some of the islands because I don't believe the global community will come up with the resources for us to maintain all of the islands. It's very certain also that many of our people will not be able to be accommodated. So the only other option is to relocate them. We're preparing our people. They are migrating. They are moving. Of course, they can come back if they do so desire. As leaders, our responsibility is to provide the choices for our people. We don't send them away. They make that decision. But if and when they do, we must have prepared them before that.
That's rather unfortunate, but yeah, it's very, very important to be prepared, and it's very, very important for people to have the option and when they are ready to move. Because, of course, it's a very, I don't have words to describe, because the thing is that all this is very, very shocking for me. I cannot imagine a place like this being lost because it's just such a beautiful place. It's paradise to me. I can see how you, in your retirement, living within nature over here, because it's so simple to live within nature. We in developed nations are very, very stressed about even leaving our own homes. It's a huge deal if we move from a city to another city.
That's right.
And here you're talking about abandoning ship, abandoning your entire nation, moving to another country and starting a new life over there, and not being able to return back to your own country. Absolutely. Because the country is completely submerged.
Well, it's always been the most painful thing that has gone through my mind. Planning for the day when that would be the case, when we have to talk about relocating our people, and it's not about. It's got to be. We've got to be brutally realistic about this. The water's coming. The storms are coming stronger than we'd ever had. And so we've got to be able to provide options for our people. I talk about relocation, not with any sense of pride. Those are the only options. And so if that were to be the case, then the least we could do is ensure that our people, if and when they do relocate, would migrate with dignity.
Exactly.
Okay, with dignity is absolutely vital, because we're very proud of what it is, no matter how meager our possessions are. The greatest thing we possess is our pride. I was so happy that I managed to get the United Nations Secretary General to visit, and he came away not only understanding what I've been saying at the General Assembly, but feeling what it is that we have to deal with. And so he has been very committed. Your coming here hopefully has given you that same feeling, and
Exactly.
it will give you that not only inspiration but the energy to advocate.
Absolutely wonderful speaking to you, sir. Absolutely wonderful. It was a lot for me to take in, and it'll take me some time to take in. And I'm very glad that I'm here. And thank you to you and your country for being such beautiful hosts.
Let me thank you on behalf of our people. So thank you for having done this. And we need celebrities like yourself to speak on our behalf. You have the responsibility, and I forgive me for being a little demanding, but as I said, people with the capacity have the obligation to do something about it. We must work together to preserve
Exactly.
it. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.